lived a young woman named Jessica. Jessica had just moved into the house, and she thought this house was, well, listeners, how should we describe this house that Jessica lived in? Oh, very good, very good. You're right. It was very small and tight. Everything was packed together. But there was all wonderful pictures and very comfortable. She didn't bring any of her own furniture. Everything was there for her. In fact, she had the most beautiful view of a grove in her backyard. She loved to spend picnics out there. In fact, today was a beautiful day. She was going to have herself a picnic. As she walked out there, listeners, she ran into a very dashing gentleman. How should we describe this dashing man? Look around you, or if you want to... You're right, he was very smart. He was very clever and well-read. How else do you want to describe him? Oh, good, good. Yes, he was very cheerful, the kind of man that you would love to take to a party. And well-hydrated. His skin was immaculate, very, very handsome. She introduced herself, and he introduced himself as Samuel. He said that he had lived in the town for a very long time and was so happy to make her acquaintance. He asked her if they can have a picnic together. What do you think? Should Rebecca and Samuel have a picnic together? Her and the stranger? You say yes, so did she. She said, of course I would be delighted. They had a picnic and they had all kinds of things to eat. But her favorite was, what was her favorite thing to eat? It was something particular to her. Now, Rebecca, what was that picnic snack? Ooh, yes, yes. Oh my goodness. You're right. She made the most delightful petite hamburgers. Inside of the hamburgers was not only onions and tomato and lettuce, but she put some Gruyere cheese inside, which just made it so delightful. And Samuel was very impressed by her cooking skills. He asked her about what she did for a living, how long she'd been in town. He asked her her financial situation, you know, all the usual questions you ask when you get to know somebody. They bidded each other adieu, and she went off back into her house with her heart skipping a beat. But that night, she had a dream. Blue smoke filled her dream, and something chaotic. What is that? Something swirling in her dream was coming towards her. Oh dear, it was something poisonous going towards her, slowly, slowly, as if it was attacking her. What was it, listeners? What was attacking her in her dream? Well, her nightmare. It could be anything. Oh dear, oh dear. You are so right. There was a broom. The broom was swirling towards her. The broom, instead of bristles, had spikes. And the spikes were dripping with poison, coming at her throat. She tried to throw her hands up and she awoke from her nightmare. What could that possibly mean? She needed to lay off of all of the mead, perhaps. She sat up in the middle of the night. She looked out her window at her wonderful apple grove where she had just had a picnic with Samuel, and she saw a woman out there, dressed in a white gauze dress. And, listeners, should she go out there? Should she chase after the woman? What say you? Yes? What do you say? Do you say yes as well? We are all agreed. All right. She decided that she was going to chase after the woman. She grabbed her coat. 3 o'clock in the morning, into the mist, she ran through the grove. The woman was gone. She swore that she was there. She could just picture her in her mind, and underneath the tree, she saw a letter. Yet inside the letter was a poem of love. She found a love poem. It had aged from the dirt, and it had said how much they loved somebody. And That's so strange. Maybe this woman had dropped it, but this letter was quite dirty, as if it had been buried. That's so strange, she thought. She ran back to the house, kept the letter with all of her other things, and went to sleep. That morning, she awoke, and guess who was at the door? Samuel! Oh, the handsome man that she had spent a wonderful picnic with. Samuel wanted to take her out on a rowboat. What do you say? Should she go with him? You say yes? What do you say? Do you say yes? Or should she stay inside all day? You don't know. That's all right, listener. She decided yes, that she would go. They spent a lovely time on the boat, talking about the weather, talking about their favorite things to do. He talked about his love for writing poetry and his love for animals. That was his favorite thing to do, was to spend time with animals. Isn't that sweet? Such a nice chap. She went home, thought about Samuel all day long, and then she thought that she would just take a turn about the grove. As she walked around the grove, she found, you're not going to believe this, she found another letter. Only this letter was talking about an engagement. How excited they were to be engaged and married. Oh, what a love story she had stumbled upon. She took the letter back home, and it matched the same handwriting as the poetry. Oh, how exciting, she thought. Oh dear. There was a little bit of blood on the letter. Something must have happened. Well, it's nothing for her to worry about. It doesn't concern her. So she grabbed herself her dinner for the night. She sat and read a book. She began to fall asleep as she lay by the fire, and she began to have another dream. Only this time, she had a dream about the woman who she had seen in the grove earlier. Oh dear! The woman wanted to tell her something. What was the woman trying to tell her? It could be anything. What say you, listener? What was the woman all in white and gauze trying to tell her? It could be anything. Oh, I could see you thinking, yes. Oh dear, what could it be? Was she trying to communicate to her? Poison apples. Killing, murderous rage. Oh, it was all garbage. She couldn't quite put all the pieces together, but something happened to this woman. That's all that she could come up with, and she woke up. She grabbed a shovel, and she went somewhere. Where'd she go? She grabbed a shovel and... Yes. She went into the garden. She felt like a woman possessed. She didn't know what to do. She put the shovel down in the rose garden and began to dig, and she found a whole box of letters. Love letters to a man named Maximilian, between a woman named Rose and Maximilian. There was a love affair. There was a promise of marriage and a huge dowry. And why would all these letters be buried inside of her garden? Wait, Rose. She recognized that name. She ran back into the house, threw all the papers and the deed that she had signed. The house that she lived in used to be Rose's house. Oh dear. No, this can't be, she thought. Oh, something must have happened to the woman who lived here before, Rose. Sweet Rose, something must have happened to her, and she was going to solve what had happened. The next morning, she ran into Samuel. Now, should she tell Samuel what she had found? What do you think, listeners? Should she tell this handsome, dashing man what she found? You say no. No, she decided to keep it her secret. No one must know. She must solve it herself. She was an independent woman. She didn't need his opinion. So he felt like something was off, and he handed her a letter. She took the letter and said that she would read it later and that she needed to spend some time by herself. And thank you for understanding. Samuel left, and she sat there in her room, and she opened the letter. Oh, listeners, he wrote her a beautiful poem about her long raven hair and her beautiful green eyes. What a sweet... Wait a second, listeners. a poem. We have seen a poem before. And this handwriting seemed familiar. Listener, should she compare the handwriting to the handwriting of the letter? She felt her heart skip and pump and beat and clench as she began to compare each letter, hoping upon hope that it did not match. But listeners, it matched. It was a perfect match. The curly Q's, the Y's, even the signature at the bottom almost matched, but instead of Maximilian, it said Samuel. Oh my, this is a coincidence. It must be, it cannot. Oh dear. The next morning, Samuel came by, just like he did before. Should she invite him inside? Maybe she can confront him? What do you say? Should she invite him inside? You say yes. What do you say? You say to be on the lookout. You say, oh, have a pillow close by. What do you say? Just coffee. They can just share a coffee. Okay, I think that's... She invites him inside, and they're just going to have a little bit of tea or coffee and just hang out. But she forgot to put the letters away. Samuel noticed the box behind her, and he reached for... What did Samuel reach for? He reached for something behind her. What was it? Oh, listeners, I'm so scared to even say what Samuel reached for. Yes. Oh, he reached for a cup of coffee. He stood up and began to sip it and drink. He mumbled and laughed and said, oh, look, what peculiar box of letters you have here. That seems quite... Where did you find these letters? Did you find them in the garden? Yes, Rebecca said. I found them in the garden. I dug them up, and should she tell him the handwriting matches? Should she tell him? What do you say? Yes? She told him that the handwriting matched. He began to laugh. A wicked, heinous laugh. Oh, yes. Her entire throat began to feel as if it was filled with acid or bile or pickle juice. She could barely swallow. When she wasn't looking, he had put poison in her drink. No. Rebecca, no. She began to watch the lights fade. Swirling voices echoed in her head. Listeners, should she fight the poison off that's going through her veins? She said, yeah, I will fight. I cannot. This is not how I will go out. No. She reached her arm out and she grabbed a broom. She grabbed the broom, and the broom swung wildly in her kitchen, knocking over a stack of knives. The knives flung across the room, penetrating Samuel. Samuel had 6 knives stuck inside of him. Still flailing around, Rebecca moved the broom back and forth. She was fighting off the poison as Samuel lay there with the knives inside. As he began to bleed, he confessed that he had poisoned Rose, that he had persuaded Rose to fall in love with him, to leave the house to him and all of her money. But young Rebecca bought the house before the last deed was signed. So he was trying to kill her and do the same thing to her that he had done to Rose. He lay there with knives sticking into his body, just like he deserved, as Rebecca crawled her way out. She waved down. Who did she wave down? There was somebody there. Who was there? Somebody was there in the grove. Could be anyone. What say you, listener? You're right. A police officer, and he was wearing a fool's hat just like yours. She waved down a police officer who just happened to be by. He picked her up and took her to the hospital. And she was okay. She was saved. Oh, listeners, you solved it. I think that this one was the most terrifying yet. The knives flying across the wall and penetrating Sam. Listeners, you are too much. I love it. I love it. We rescued souls. Oh my goodness, Rose must have come to Rebecca in her dream, giving her a premonition of the future. Well done, listeners. Solve the mystery. Now be on your guard. Be on your guard if you are ever having yourself a picnic and somebody who is too good to be true happens by. Well done, listeners. I'm proud of each and every one of you for contributing to the story. I really don't know where I would be without you. You know, it does get quite sad in this little box all by myself, and anytime you come by, it really does make my day. I hope that I have made yours. Now remember, this story is brought to you by Time Boats. One mask, one ride. Well done, my listeners. This is Martha Deathstone signing off. Ta-ta for now.